Start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge
Pledge
allegiance
allegiance
to
to
the
the
flag
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everybody. It's great to have big crowds. We're gonna start off with all y'all.
Okay, so thank you first off for letting us have the platform to recognize all these great students and musicians. This month is Music in Our Schools Month, and we have a great concert tomorrow night where we get to celebrate everyone. But we wanted to take tonight to recognize these individuals because they participated in either area All-State in November, junior high All-County in January, or elementary All-County in March. And to do this, they needed to not only participate in the festival and learn very challenging music, but they also had to audition, some of them last year at their NYSSMA Solo Festival, some of them at an elementary all-county audition in January. So a lot of time, effort, and musicianship has been put into all of their efforts. So that's why we're here tonight. And I'm going to start off by recognizing the area All-State students. And some couldn't make it tonight, but we're going to give everyone a thunderous round of applause because they all deserve it. And our first student that participated in Area All-State is Maeve Lamoriello. Next, we have Michael Schiavoli. And we're going to skip to junior high All-County. We have, no, elementary All-County. We have Theodore G. CMEA gave out their own certificates, so some of you are getting two. We have Natalie El-Halafawi. We have Nicholas Renzo. We have Abigail Vuokolo. And now junior high All-County, Adriana Chattery. Pam Glassen. Matthew Glazer. Daphne Rowland. Richard Ryan. Barbie Ryan. Mia Sullivan. And Jackie Venega Lopez. You know what, my papers were a little sticky. Also, area All-State, we had Aiden Fitter.
I'd like to congratulate Owen Lewis on his participation in elementary All-County. I'm going to be here tonight, so we are going to recognize the middle school participants first for chorus. Up first was Dahlia Leone. Geneva. Mary Ellen Meyer. Anna Rubo. Sophia Gonzalez. And Riley Dillon. Colette Kate Ashon. and Amber Concanon. We also had 3 fifth graders participate in elementary all county. First up, we have Beatrice Snyder. And Wyatt Gatlin. Thank you so much for letting us recognize these students at the Board of Education meeting. It means a lot to them and also to us, so thank you.
Thank you to our teachers, because without you, our program would not be what it is today and what it has been for many years. So Dan, thank you to your leadership within the department. And as we've added new teachers, we've just added more talent and more dedication to our students. So I really appreciate that. And to the parents, because I know it's not easy to make sure that your kiddos are always at every rehearsal and all of the other obligations that you have. I know that they can compete, but you make the time for them to be able to be involved and to really explore their interests. So thank you to all of you as well. And to our students, stick with it. I know that as you get older, it's hard to make time for everything, but these are the things that you enjoy and they really do enrich your lives and will enrich your future. So try to stick it out as long as you can and you know, really live in the passion of music. So thank you.
From the board standpoint, we really want to thank you. First of all, thank you for coming out and spending time with us. It is amazing when we go out to other districts, meetings, revolving around specific schools in the area. Millbrook is always, all we get is compliments on not just the quality of music that comes out of Millbrook, but the quality of the students, the behavior, the professionalism. You make us proud every time you go to a show, every time you go to a competition, you make us proud. So we all wanted to say thank you so much for what you do and keep it up. Right? Thank you, everybody.
Watkins could get all of the students together to try and take a picture somewhere so that we can, if it's okay with the parents, put it out there in the newsletter and everything and make sure that there's recognition out in the public for those that came tonight.
So what if the students meet me in the hallway? I'll try to.
And parents, you are more than welcome to stay for a very riveting board dedication. But we will hold it against nobody. If they make their way out as well, we totally understand. Late nights are good for fun things, but this can be a lot of business stuff, so. Welcome to stay, but certainly no obligation. Thank you for being here.
So you think the board is, thank you.
I didn't say that. I just said it, I didn't write it down.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks so much.
It's one of my favorite things. I'm not yelling. It's cool.
All right. Next is the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve? So move. Do I have a second?
Second.
Questions, comments, specific items you want pulled? Anything? Very good. All in favor? Any against? Next, we have, Chris won't be here tonight, he's got a family, medical something going on. So the president's report, the only thing I was gonna ask is, ask Cheryl to just, she went to the super eval, last, I guess it is. I think Chris and I are gonna try to go in August, I think is the next one. But if there's anyone that wants to go as well, I believe they're remote as well as.
Yeah. I just have to look at August again. Well, maybe not all the way, but at least going out. So I'll have to check if August is remote as well, but it was remote when I went and it was really great. It was worth it. It was 4 hours. And typically when you're doing a 4-hour training like that, it's not always so engaging, but I was engaged the entire time. It had really good information, so I thought it would be really helpful for all of us, so.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the first year we had it, I think we kind of stumbled our way through it. This past year, a little better, but we still have, definitely have room for improvement on not just the tool, but the calendar and what to do with, different items underneath. So, like I said, if you're interested, I don't even know what the date in August is.
I don't know it off the top of my head.
But if you're interested, I really think we should try to get our act together this year. Of course, it won't be soon enough because we need to get it done by July, but that. All right, that's all. Oh, I think that's all I had. Yeah, that's all I had. Caroline?
Yes, so as Dan Dunninger just said, we look forward to our musicians, that will be taking stage tomorrow. Mr. Lucas shared that Alden's super excited that his 4th and 5th grade bands will be sharing a selection of their work from this year, but it's Music in Our Schools Month, so it's a very exciting concert. And hopefully everyone can attend. We've had continued support from literacy and math coaches, with promising classroom instructional practices, especially as the state tests near. We do not focus on teaching to the test, but we know that good instruction helps prepare our students for the test. So as we get to this time of the year, we're really trying to keep students focused on the practices and strategies that may make a difference. Alden Place 5th grade students finish their science investigations requirements for the school year as they prepare for the New York State Science Assessment. So that's one of the shifts in science instruction, is certain investigations that they need to complete by the end of each year. Students in the STEM 7-8 were the first to try the VR virtual reality classroom headsets that were obtained by an MEF grant written between Ms. Morton, the library media specialist at the secondary level, and Ms. Lattenville, who's an instructional technology specialist. So the classroom VR allows students to travel virtually into augmented reality and see all different spaces. I know that one of the administrators just observed these in use as well in one of our social studies classrooms. So they are using it for many different types of learning across the content areas. So that's really exciting to see, since they just came into our possession very recently and they're already being used with our students. On March 13th, the high school held an electives fair. Teachers and students shared information about experiences for our elective classes so that students can make their course selection requests for their programming for next year. That's become an annual tradition where we've had teachers share that with their students, sort of advertise their electives. It's always important when students have an area of interest, but they may not even know of something that they could be interested in until they hear something that might pique that interest. We also, keeping with the tradition of what's been happening in other buildings, IBM engineers visited the high school classrooms on March 21st to share about experiences within the engineering fields, and students really seem to enjoy the opportunity to meet with these community partners. So thank you to those folks who visited. Last week, we held what we call the Principal Olympics in the beginning of our search for the next principal of Alden Place due to Mr. Lipka's upcoming retirement. After reviewing nearly 40 applications, we were able to narrow the field, and those candidates came in and met with administrators, teachers, staff, parents, and community members to be able to engage in multiple tasks that would be authentic to the role of being principal. We've narrowed down the field even further, and there was an additional interview that took place just prior to this meeting, so apologize for squeaking in here right before the start. Appreciate everybody's patience. Dr. Sobran, who is our math specialist, has been working with both Elm and Alden, but I'm sure Ms. O'Connell will be sharing more about that, so I will leave it alone. Our E&L department hosted Red Hook, Pine Plains, and Rhinebeck for a roundtable. So what has happened is there's sort of a partnership that's been forged between these 4 districts, and they've been taking opportunities to travel around to each of the districts, host one another, share best practices, and really provide each other feedback with the practices that they are using with their students in their classrooms. Obviously, the more minds you can get in the room thinking around the same focus area, the stronger our practices can become. So it's really awesome. This is the first year that we've participated and the first opportunity we've had to host. So thank you to our E&L department for taking the lead on that. And the department's really excited, E&L department as well, is really excited to host its 2nd annual World Cup night at the middle school on April 10th. One of the things that I think we really want to advertise is this is not just for our students and families who are learning English as a new language. We really want community members to come and be a part of this. This is about inclusivity and engagement within. So we did have one family who came last year to a bingo night and said, we didn't really know if we were allowed. So we really want to spread the word and let everybody know that this is absolutely not an exclusive activity. It is an inclusive activity, right? Even if you're not necessarily a soccer player, you could, your child could come and they could participate in a different way. So it's just an opportunity for folks to come, get together, mingle. The kiddos can have some fun playing soccer, and a good time can be had by all. So nicest lat testing, which is specific to our students who are learning English as a new language. That happens annually, and that helps us to determine at what level of service the students are performing. So the nicest lat testing window for reading and writing, as well as listening, will be from May 12th through May 23rd, and schedules have already been sent out to the principals, and the speaking window starts April 14th. So just in a short period of time, we will be beginning that, and that helps us to plan for programming for next year. The Alden Place Talent Show is set for April 3rd. Alden is very excited about some of the work that the maintenance team has done to make sure that there's proper lighting on their stage in their all-purpose room so that all of our little stars can shine as they do their performances. The Blue Blazer Assembly for Alden recognized 20 students for exhibiting empathy, and focused on April, students will be working on displaying courage throughout their daily interactions. Miss Agne's class took a trip to the Trevor Zoo, which focused on conservation and preservation of wildlife. So the students really enjoyed that opportunity. And this, I think, is probably my most favorite part of this entire presentation. The middle school student government traveled to Poughkeepsie on Wednesday, March 19th to talk to members of the Dutchess County Legislature, the county clerk, and the county executive. Students were actually given the opportunity to ask questions about running for office, serving constituency groups, and the responsibilities of an elected official. So they were able to take a tour of offices and meeting rooms, and then they had lunch at the Mill House in Poughkeepsie, where they held their second March student government meeting. This little group has been super active. They have been doing research to find out how they, as students, can speak about their experiences in the middle school and their hopes and dreams for this capital project that the district has put forth. So what a bunch of powerful little minds that have gathered in that group. And kudos to Damien Whitaker and Jen Fight, who are their advisors for really allowing them to, think beyond the district and see what government and civic action looks like outside of, their small town. So I thought that was really fabulous. And seventh grade students also had the opportunity to visit IBM in Poughkeepsie. They were divided into multiple groups and experienced the test floor, manufacturing, and able to see, the quantum computing. So thank you to the volunteers from IBM who did those round robin tours. And the senior trip will take place from the 28th through the 31st. And thank you to Mr. Porta and Mrs. McCarthy for organizing this very exciting opportunity for our seniors. I did provide some upcoming events there. Most notably is probably our wellness fair. So we have a wellness fair for staff and also for students. The one for community members is listed above at 6:30, and then if you click down below, you'll see information on the website. So if anyone has any questions, I can take them now.
I have one. The World Cup night thing.
Yes.
Will our Facebook person, our marketing person put it on the school the school Facebook page?
Advertising it, do you mean?
Yeah.
It's been out
Yeah,
there.
it should be out already.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And as a community member or something, can could I go on and share it so that? Well,
Yeah, but it's only open to our students. It's not like,
Oh, it's not open to the public.
no, it's not open to the
Oh, I thought
public.
that's what you were saying. was that it
No,
was.
it's that it's
Okay.
not just for
It's just
our,
the families.
Yeah.
Gotcha,
it's not just for our ENL students, it's
Okay.
for students of the Millburg Central
Oh,
School
okay,
District.
okay.
So we want to be inclusive, but unfortunately, I don't think that message has landed, that just because it's sponsored by the ENL department doesn't mean that it's just for students who are
So
being
you were,
serviced. with
gotcha.
it.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Any of our soccer players showing up for this, high school, senior and juniors? Sort of,
No, so I think that they maybe didn't really know that they were welcome to. So I think that that's a push that we can make is just, I mean, it's a tough time of year because they might be playing other sports.
Yeah.
But we can certainly make that intentional invitation. I think open to all families maybe wasn't clear enough that we wanted them to come, kind of thing.
I'm in, like our high school players.
Yeah.
The little ones always seem to get excited,
Of course.
when they see the bigger ones come up,
Yeah,
and
they're
show
like
up.
celebrities.
So, yeah, I mean, if it's possible, we should do that, should try to get them there.
Yes.
Okay.
And then I also did you have a question?
Go ahead.
Well, before I segue into something.
Okay, not about the soccer night, but with the VR headsets, do you know if those are going to be utilized by the kids, like 7th and 8th graders who aren't gonna be going on the Philly or DC trip? So that they could tour Philly and DC?
Yeah, I don't know, but it sounds like a good opportunity
So I
for
can
them.
speak for the eighth grade, so I just happened to be in the classes for eighth grade. And all eighth graders had the opportunity to take a VR trip, using the headset, so they specifically in the class I was in, looked at the Lincoln Memorial and the Washington Memorial, looked through how to read the inscription, so they felt like they were there and, make connections to the symbolism of those two monuments and their position within the National Mall.
Thank you.
So I did just want to respond, something that came to our attention this week was there's a misunderstanding, and I don't know how broad this misunderstanding is or how far it has traveled, but there's a misunderstanding in some segment of the public population that, post-COVID, the district received $13 million in COVID grants. And where did that money go? Well, first and foremost, that is not true. We did not receive, but 10% of that, and that was over multiple years. And so you may remember if you were engaged in board workings at that time, the initial money right away, much of that money was spent on cleaning supplies, machinery, MERV rated filters. You might recall that we had to increase the particulate, like the filtration to a smaller particulate level on our-
Airflow,
Yeah, well, right, the airflow.
make it
and
sound
also-
simpler.
Yeah, and also make sure that like particles didn't get
Yes.
through, right, but still allow for airflow. So one of the things that happened as a result of that was that the filtration actually caused some of the motors to fail, right? So there was some machinery, there were some, the MERV rated filters, then there was some equipment that needed to be purchased related to all of this, targeting keeping our students safe, right? We had to buy specific uniforms and cleaning suits for our custodial and maintenance staff. We had scanning thermometers, we had materials for partitions, et cetera, et cetera. So that was like the initial money. We also immediately purchased some software that teachers could use during asynchronous and or synchronous remote learning. Then there was, so that was about $101,000 right off. Then there was another grant for $300,000 that allowed us to bring on more maintenance, and custodial workers. It allowed us to hire another psychologist and carry the expense of those two particular positions for multiple years. And that was, like I said, around $373,000. And the bulk of our money came from a 3-year grant, which was $848,000. And that was a 3-year grant. It expired at the beginning of last year, but that allowed us to pay nursing stipends for contact tracing, off hours. It allowed us to have, testing kits and testing clinics for our folks. It allowed us to buy some supplies and materials in targeting closing the achievement gap that we knew was going to be left in the wake of the COVID pandemic. It allowed us to have the Summer Scholars Program for 2 summers. It allowed us to bring in some mindful moments, which was the yoga program that allowed our students to really work through some of the emotions and get back to sort of baseline after a very odd experience in their young little lives. It gave us an evaluation library for special education testing. Many of our students were experiencing delays just from time outside of the classroom, also just not having typical early educational experiences. There were issues with motor planning from wearing masks. There were much more issues with speech development and articulation. So there was an evaluation library. There was some money supporting the Readers and Writers Workshop, some public relations work that was done. We also had some sensory support. So again, students who were kind of at home, maybe parents were working, and those early, preschool students weren't getting all those experiences of social interaction and the very important planned play that they do get in programs, even if the planned play and all of that stuff is very important, but even just socializing, right, in a daycare setting, even if it's not a preschool setting, those skills are really important, and many students went without them if they didn't have siblings that were around. We brought on the CAPE contract, which is the Dutchess County Council for Addiction Prevention and Education. We created a position of social emotional learning coordinator. That was sustained in the budget afterwards. Some of the initial SEL programming came out of this grant. We had before and after school academic support that was offered in different buildings that happened different times of the day. Some chose to do before, some chose to do after. We also had therapeutic crisis intervention training. We purchased portions of an anti-bullying curriculum, and we added an academic intervention teacher. So that eats up $48,000 pretty quickly. So in sum and substance, we actually received $1.3 million over the course of multiple school years. And what I find to be the most interesting part of this rumor, misunderstanding, or whatever you would say, is that we're audited on all of the funds that we receive from the state and the federal government, and, it's right down to like the purchase order plus the invoice has to be given. So there isn't a way, right, to tuck any of this money anywhere. And I know that, it sounds like, well, we had 1.3 million, why didn't we do something with it? There's very specific requirements for how we can spend that money. And so, again, as I said, it was 100,000, 373,000, 848,000 in different buckets with different requirements for how we could spend it. For an example, the 848,000, we had to set aside at least 20% of that directly targeting closing the achievement gap, right? So, you know, even that right there is a big chunk of that money that has to be used in this way. And then, you know, some of it was applicable otherwise, but it wasn't even 1.3 million that we could have put that large chunk to one thing. It was separate buckets, it was over a 3-year period, and it had very specific purposes for it. So I just wanted to publicly say that we heard that, be responsive to the information that we're receiving, and anybody who has questions about that, I'm happy to sit down. Like I said, we've been audited on all of this, and the 848,000, the American Rescue Plan ARP grant. There's still a monitoring process that we're in the midst of, even though the grant finished at the beginning of the last school year. So it's pretty thorough and rigorous, and there's really nothing more to it than if you want to come see it, I'd be happy to sit down with you.
Well, I think that's the key message here is if you hear something, if you know, somebody tells you something and you're thinking, gee, that's a lot of money, where'd it go? Or I don't understand how come they got that over here. Rather than stew about it or, you know, just asking other people, call the district and ask, you know, or call into a meeting or come to a meeting.
Right.
And we'll get those questions answered. I mean, that's part of why we have these meetings. Anyway, you good?
I want to say thank you for sharing that detailed information. That was really helpful. And I recall, I just got on the board and I recall what you were saying about the auditing and kind of the specific needs where it has to go. Is it possible at all to add that detailed information on our website, the portion, I think, where we have sort of like a Q&A with the capital project about like questions and answers, or would it be feasible to add like a section about grants that we do receive and maybe like a link of like you can get more information what this grant is supposed to go to and how it's audited and how it has to go to specific costs for future grants that we might receive and sort of make it more explainable so we don't have to do this every time where it's kind of just like these are the grants we regularly get.
Yeah, so ironically, the grants are out there,
Okay.
which is, that's kind of the funny part is they are out there, but I think people aren't looking, right? They're hearing what they hear. And so, sure, you know, we can say, like, is it true that the district received $13 million? No, right? Like, we can say no, and, for more information. One of the reports, I was trying to print it today and it was like 100 and something pages because it's literally down to like 3 boxes of 100 masks, you know? So it's kind of crazy, but yeah, we can put summaries, like the final cost reports for some of it could be out there. It's really boring reading, but yes, you can find it. And the instruction manuals for these grants are like hundreds of pages, so sure.
Then you can be like, go look, this is the.
Yeah, I
shared
mean,
it, and
yes,
This is the transparency.
right. I think the biggest piece is that we are audited very strictly, very tightly for all of these things. And again, it being a 3-year process, there was auditing along the way. We had to submit annual final spend, like expenditure reports, and then one in the end of that 3 years, so. All the while, they were watching what we were doing.
Thank you for addressing that.
Yeah. No problem, of course.
Any other questions for Caroline? All right. That's why you're here.
Good evening, everyone. I love being here, talking about my amazing building. So we continue to collaborate with Dr. Sobrin, who's our math consultant, and Shelley Klein, who's our literacy consultant. It's been a continuation of the work that we've done, even starting with like our summer mini grant work. And I'm just really proud of there's a lot of work on the teachers' end that they have to do after these, meetings with the consultants, and they really go right to it. So we've done a lot of work at, like looking at data, seeing where the needs are in upper grades, like 3, 4, 5, and seeing how we can support those areas of deficit in, the pre-K to 2 level. We've done a lot of cross grade level vertical alignment, really looking at the standards and what they look like in, pre-K, K, what they look like from K to 1, and the minor differences to ensure that teachers, when they're teaching theme in kindergarten, they're not teaching it the exact way that they already, like first grade teachers are teaching it. They're not teaching it exactly how the kindergarten teachers are teaching it. So really fine tuning what is already great instruction, but just making it more vertical and trying to align it with Alden Place as far as 3rd grade as well. We use PNW BOCES, their SSELA curriculum. And what that is it talks a lot about how there's not a lot of time built in for science and social studies in a day, but talking about how it's really easy to build in social studies into your reading block with really purposeful, authentic text. So they have a lot of resources that in the past have been printed, but during Superintendent's Conference Day, I worked with not just Elm teachers, but 3rd grade at Alden, and then I actually worked with some middle school staff members, kind of reviewing that curriculum updates that they have, just going over it's updated, in real time. So it's really important to go in. They have a lot of great tools so that teachers don't have to kind of reinvent the wheel when finding things. They've done all of that legwork. So I'm glad that our district has that for our staff. And 2 of our staff members have participated in the Orton Gillingham training. We actually have 3 who are completing that training right now. So then all of our newest staff will be trained in Orton Gillingham. As far as safety, we had an amazing safety team meeting on the 25th of February. We reviewed that last lockdown drill that we had. And from that, while it went really well, there's always some really great takeaways that we can, have. So at our safety team meeting, some suggestions came up that could just further improve the protocols. And in collaborating with facilities, they were able to implement some of these things. And I'm really happy we're done, because I guess they've been suggestions previously, but it's nice to, ask for it and then literally within a couple of days get it. That was great. I continue to send out a safety tip of the day, and it's not just like basic safety things like evacuation plans and, lockdown procedures. It's really like safety tips like, these are some tips and tricks to de-escalate a student. These are some tips to, for cyber safety. Don't leave a password on a post-it on your laptop, things like that. So on Superintendent's Conference Day, I also worked with a lot of the aides and just reviewing a lot of the different building safety expectations. Again, we did a lot of work on verbal de-escalation of students. I feel like a lot of our teachers get that, but sometimes, they're not always a part of the PD. So it was really nice. We had like a walking field trip to our not only secondary location, but in the event that there was something going on in the secondary location, we have another location. So it was nice to kind of show everyone that. Some special highlights every year. I'm really grateful that Dutchess County 4-H partners with the New York Agriculture in the Classroom for Literacy Week. So we had a Dutchess Community College student, Paloma, Miss Paloma. I am not even going to pretend that I know how to say her last name. They called her Miss Paloma. And she was wonderful, so thank you to her. She came in and she volunteered a whole day of a whole day and provided lessons to all of our first and second grade classrooms. They read The Pie That Molly Grew, and then they made pumpkin pie in a bag, and it's really nice. They come, every classroom gets a book donated to them, and all of the supplies are provided. And it's just a really wonderful hands-on experience for the kids. They had a great time. So thank you for that. And I look forward to that continuing. Grade 2 enjoyed their Sharon Audubon trip, where they learned all about maple sugaring, and then they made some waffles. They did not bring me any, but they made some and used the maple syrup. And Read Across America Week, a lot of different fun, engaging things were brought into the building. We even had Dr. Seuss and Thing 1 and Thing 2 show up for our students, so that was fun. And some upcoming events. Our Blue Ribbon Blazer Assembly actually was moved to next Wednesday, which is not typically when it would be, but due to unforeseen circumstances, we did have to move that. So we will recognize students for who have demonstrated acceptance and diversity. And then our next focus is on active listening. Our third marking quarter ends already, which is hard to believe, on April 11th. I am so excited about this. So huge thank you to our PTO. We will be having the Sky Dome Planetarium come on May 13th. And essentially it's a really large indoor blow up planetarium. But in collaborating with the other buildings, we were able to, it's K through 8. So we were able to make a schedule to have additional performances so that all of the kids at Alden Place and Millbrook Middle School will be coming down to have their own little experience. So I'm really looking forward to that.
And I'm assuming the board members are invited?
100%, definitely. And it was really great when I sent the information out to my staff members. One of the teachers said, oh my goodness, that was one of my core memories when I was in school. So I'm really, really excited because these are those things that the kids will remember forever. So I'm just grateful that we can have it be through so many of our buildings. Grandparents' Day, it's almost here. Information will be sent home this week, and it will take place on the 25th of April. And it's not just Grandparents' Day. We welcome every child is invited to bring 2 special someone. So if there isn't a grandparent, there's always been aunts, uncles, family friends. So it's just a great time. And on Arbor Day, the Millbrook Shade Tree Committee will visit, and every year, this is annual, they do a tree planting on our property. They will be planting a new elm tree, and our first grade students are always a part of it. So I look forward to some great things coming up.
Question? Lisa, one of the things, like, you have no idea how proud I am of the district for getting pre-K implemented. Have you put together, like, would seem to me, and, you know, I may be completely out base. Pre-K is like a great place to just launch the kids. And I would kind of like to see, hey, in the next 3 years or 4 years, these are things we need to implement at pre-K to continue to grow our kids. Is that something that we could ask you guys to bring in at maybe the next time Elm comes in?
I would love to do that. We've said this so many times. I'm so proud of the pre-K program that we've built. It's with sadness that Miss Soriano is leaving. However, you know, I trust Miss Freeman and myself and our other leaders to have as much collaboration with whomever takes on that role. But we have Navigating Pre-K Day up in Albany. Myself and Dr. Watkins attend that. And this year, they've invited participants to really put together a display that highlights their pre-K. And we have a meeting set up with our pre-K teachers to collaborate and throw that together, not throw that together, but put that together. And I would definitely, I'm positive that if invited, Miss Freeman and Miss Soriano, if it's prior to her departure, would join and gladly speak to that, to everything that they're doing. But it's our goal that we will be the keynote speakers at a pre-K, Navigating Pre-K Day. That is our end goal, because when we've attended, I listened to all of these amazing things that are happening in other districts. And I can't help but glow to think like, we're there, but a little better. So, I would gladly.
The more we know about, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, what you have planned, the more we can plan for it. So, I'll leave that up to you guys on how or if to do that, but I'd love to see that.
Great, I look forward to putting that together.
Anything else? Anybody?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Lisa.
you.
All right.
And I would just, whoever had the idea to get all those kids to be able to experience that planetarium, that's fantastic, so
I
thank
think
you.
that was pretty much Miss Bill Conlon.
Thank you for doing that, that's great.
Yeah.
Because, if they have moved on from Elm and they hear about that, especially, the kids that have just moved on, they'd be like, oh, I missed it.
Yeah.
So I think that's fantastic.
And there are a lot of opportunities for that, and I actually was talking with Mr. Cabello about, so in order to allow for, more time slots and just to make it work with the secondary schedule, the company is starting their first performance at 8:30, which is great because it goes 8:30 to 9:15. So it won't interfere with the kids coming. They'll all be in the APR. So there's a lot of like little things, but it's great that we can make it work. But because middle school is doing it first thing in the morning, we talked about making it even more purposeful with taking some of those kids and maybe doing classroom visitations, buddy readings with like middle school students in some of the classrooms, because when we talk about a love of like literacy, kids love being read to, and they especially love being read to by not just adults, but, kids that they look up to, that they know enjoy it. So, looking to definitely further some more. We're so close together. It's great that we can do these things.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, the financials. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Questions or comments for anybody? All in favor? Aye. Any against? Next is the 5100 attendance policy, first reading. Any comments or questions about 5100?
I have a question, unless I missed it, are we setting a number of days that we're going by? What if you're absent consecutively for this number of days, then such and such will take effect?
Consecutively. So there is language in there that requires a doctor's note, is that what you mean?
No, I saw, where it's, if it's excused versus unexcused, but I didn't see like a number of days, so I don't know if that is like 3 days, 10 days, like when would it be more of a concern, or is it just?
So this is, to give you a little history. There was at one point in time, a loss of credit policy. So regardless of what your child's grade was, if they missed a certain number of classes for a half school year semester class, or a full year class, they lost credit.
Okay.
So they sat through the class, they did the work, they got a score that may have been passing, but they did not actually get credit.
Okay.
In 20 years of historical knowledge. There was one student that just refused to do the makeup work, and that's the only student that has ever actually lost credit. So it was a lot of work, a lot of record keeping, a lot of like redundant emails and letters and all this stuff that was happening. To no end. And so what we've done with this is in parallel to the MTSS system that does deal with attendance, this is more about notification. So attendance is printed on 5-week progress reports. It's printed on 10-week report cards. And so these will be interim notices in between, right? So like, if you figure like the 2-week mark and the 7-week mark of a quarter is kind of where there will be a notification to parents like, hey, Dina has missed X number of days this year. Kind of thing. And so that's how the policy was sort of reconfigured to be less about denial of credit and more about notification. Let's work with MTSS and get your kiddo back to school. Kind of thing.
Oh, okay, thank you, because I didn't understand that from reading it.
Okay.
What are the major changes in 5100? Are they, I mean, grouping?
There aren't, so a lot of the like excused versus unexcused is dictated by, you know, regulation. The biggest piece of it is we took out that tie to loss of credit.
And I don't know if it matters, but does anything need to be included about like notice how we have school tools, so I get like their parents get the notifications if their students late or absent. Do we want to incorporate that at all, or whatever app or system is being used as part of notification?
So I think we try to keep it like agnostic, because if we change it, then we have to go back and change it, you know, the policies, and we have to know where it's mentioned everywhere, so we just use facts that won't change kind of thing. At least that's what we had to do. Uh-huh.
Next is first reading of 6670. Major changes in that.
So this is actually a combination of two policies. Petty cash, which has always existed, the amount of $100 is set by the law. And so that is nothing new. Cash in buildings, we created, sort of the policy update and then a regulation for specifics of who to turn it into. We've also gotten our food service director bonded so that she can actually make deposits. And so it's really more about, you should not be keeping money overnight. If you have money anywhere in your possession, it needs to be in a vault, double counter, all that kind of stuff. So not really, it's more of a formalized what should be happening.
Questions on that? Okay, thank you. Now we'll do the second reading.
I think it's fine.
Okay. On propositions, do we have a motion?
So
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, questions, concerns, comments?
So I will be doing a video to explain why there are multiple propositions, what the ballot looks like and what it means. So that when people walk into the booth, I'll be using a sample ballot just to explain. When they walk into the booth, it will be more transparent for them to make their decision.
Have we actually, I know it's sort of not the subject, but have we figured out where we're gonna have the vote? Since we can't go in the auditorium?
Yeah, we're gonna do it in the band room right next to it. We didn't want to change the building because people are so used to coming to this building that, changing the building felt like, people might think we were trying to pick them into a location. So it's just right next door. They'll come through the same circle. There's a nice, easy,
Exterior door.
door and a walkway right up to it. So we're just gonna set up right in there and
We should probably make sure that we have, you know, I don't know if it's like a little video, a map, you know, go over here, and if it's a different.
We're gonna have, it's just before the regular entrance, so we're gonna have a ton of signs.
Okay,
We'll have big signs made and, so everybody knows exactly where to go and
There's no
maybe
stairs
we'll
that way.
rope off the other doors so nobody tries to go over there.
yeah.
Or something, I don't know,
The
but,
stairs are in the auditorium up to that door.
so.
All right. Any comments or questions about any part of this? Okay, all in favor? Any against? Okay. Budget development. Elliot? Screen.
Okay, so this is just to highlight our timeline of where we are in the process. 2 months in, we're still waiting for the state to give us their next version of the state aid runs and hopefully the one house budgets that are passed either from the legislature or the Senate. We did submit our tax cap calculation, our tax levy calculation to the state controller on March 1st. So that part is done. We're compliant with that requirement. The next requirements would happen in the month of April. And again, just to show what's left in the process and then leading up to our vote on the 20th. Caroline, did you want to go through any of this? You want me to just?
Yeah, I mean, not much has changed in terms of the tripartite budget or the three components. I think we went through a pretty in-depth look at what each portion includes in previous meetings, but 76%, 76.5% of our total budget goes directly to students. So that's that program component and everything associated with educating students. We try to keep the administrative component right around 10%. And people hear administrative component and they hear $3.7 million and they think, wow, those administrators make a lot of money. But they don't fully understand that it has to do with not just administrative costs, but also supplies, materials, central office staffing. So you're talking about some of the business office folks. Any of the expenses incurred by the Board of Education, though they do not get paid, they are entitled to training. So that would be there, and also the support of a Board of Education clerk. Those expenses are there. Anything to do with processing payroll, any human resources activities, any benefits, or I guess any provision of benefits type positions would go there. Central data processing, our auditing services, our legal services, our tax collection services, our purchasing agent and public information services all come out of this component of the budget. And then the last is the 13% or just over 13%. And so one of the things that I think there's some confusion about out in the community is, but they have $4.7 million going to capital right now. So when you hear capital, you want to think about like the physical building, like the infrastructure, right? And so that's anything to do with the maintenance of that. So our custodial maintenance, staff salaries and benefits, anything to do with supplies and materials related to those departments. Anything to do with like lease expenses associated with our facilities, any of the tax certiorari proceedings and or judgments against the district for that, court claims, utilities, rental costs, any maintenance or improvements for all of our district facilities all come out of there. That is not capital in the same way of capital project. And someone said, well, why don't you just change the name of that component of the budget? It doesn't work that way. We have to keep it, that is the name of it. But I understand why people want to differentiate, but you know, this is where it's really helpful to educate the community to say, this is the capital portion, meaning this is what goes towards our buildings and the maintenance, you know, of the structures kind of thing. That is like a portion of our regular budget. And so on the next slide, you can see the pie chart, right? So
Excuse me,
gray-
Caroline, you should also mention, for whatever it's worth, the utilities, which also include oil to heat the buildings and electricity to run, to keep the lights on, are also come out of this component.
Yes, yeah, you're right. So again, right, anything to do with the buildings. So the utilities, which are astronomical. At this point in time, as we've mentioned before, right, our systems, being either end of useful life or nearing end of useful life aren't as efficient, right? And so with any efficiency upgrades, hopefully those direct costs to, utilities could be reduced. But you're right, that is part of the capital component of our budget. And so you'll see the pie chart, the gray is good. We want the gray to be the largest part of our budget. So an estimated 77% of our budget approximately goes directly to, student-facing programming. As we said, 13% to capital, and the smallest portion of our budget is the admin component, which is 10%. And we like to just show you that we're still trending in, some of the lowest percentages of the admin portion of our budget over the course of the last 7, 8 years. So we're very proud of that. We're very proud of keeping it that way. So Elliot will now go through some of our expenses or our projected expenses. Remember, this is a budget. We have to estimate in some portions for things that we just can't predict, like high cost students moving into the district. And then we will talk about some of the revenues and some of the thoughts we have about how that revenue package may change, like Elliot just said. Well, we hope, right, that the one house budgets have some influence and potentially a better aid package in the end. Part of the problem is we have to adopt our budget, and New York State's timeline is always a little bit unclear as to when we'll have that official word. So Elliot.
Thanks. So we've done this chart before. Again, this is updated for the new figures. So you'll see all the way at the bottom of the 25-26 column, our current version of this budget has our budget set for next year from an expense perspective at $35,770,520. The column all the way to the right, just as a reminder, and for anybody that's hearing this for the first time, is the categorical shift in dollars. And sometimes we move money between categories, but really the most important number is the lowest. The bottom row all the way to the right-hand side is a budget to budget increase. And for this year into next year, we're looking at a budget to budget increase of about 3.46%. So you can see some of the line items increase and decrease by double-digit percentages, but they may not be very large numbers. That second to last line, interfund transfers, that's typically been our district subsidizing our school lunch fund. Our school lunch fund is trending in a positive direction, and so we anticipate not needing to give them as much money. We're hoping that that number eventually trends to zero over the next couple of years with new leadership and new programs happening in that department. So that's like an exciting part of the story, whereas we have a lot of challenges that we're estimating in this. There are some bright spots, and that is certainly one of them. On the next slide, we're going to look at, as Caroline said, we have to balance the budget. So we're balancing our expenses with our revenues. That means we have to look for all of the money that we plan to expend on the revenue side. Can we raise enough money to cover these expenses? And so on the next slide, you're gonna see a couple of different columns. You'll see adopted, expected, and proposed. And so what that is, as Caroline just explained, the state doesn't necessarily make decisions in a timely fashion that supports school district required timelines. And so we make decisions and we adopt a budget based on certain estimations and assumptions that may or may not be adjusted or amended after the board takes action. And so I wanted to give the board, and we started doing this a couple of years ago, just some clarification on what that picture looks like. You can see that our tax levy is relatively consistent. Sometimes there are decisions and determinations and judgments that will reduce the levy slightly. In this case, we lost about $4,000 in revenue from the adopted budget to the expected. Not a huge number considering a $27 million tax levy. But there's a number of other revenue sources that fluctuate, and it's worth noticing. BOCES aid increased significantly last year. However, some of our state aid decreased. You can see $20,000 of decreased state aid in total in and of itself. But the revenues from our adopted budget to our expected budget all in, we lost about $350,000, almost $400,000. So when we make those estimations and assumptions, some of that is with the assumption that our revenue is gonna shift and it's gonna be beyond our control, right? The only revenue line that we can control with any sort of effectiveness is that tax levy number. And everything else is kind of subject to what comes in, whether it's from the state or from BOCES. And some of that fluctuation is based on other factors such as enrollment and things like that. So we just wanted to give those first two columns to give that illustration. Then you have our proposed budget. And again, without getting too deep into the weeds, for me, the most important lines are the very top and the very bottom, because the very top line is our proposed tax levy. The board did support our desire to levy at the tax cap this year. Again, we've explained a number of times when the district, such as ours, that is so heavily reliant on our tax levy as our primary revenue generator, over 74% of our money comes from tax levy. So not levy at the maximum has ripple effects in perpetuity for the district's ability to raise revenue or to obtain revenue. And so that's a big one, and we are going out at the tax cap this year for that reason. The very bottom line is the fund balance appropriation line, and you can see that right now that number is 1.974073. What that means is in order for us to balance our projected expenses with the revenues we anticipate, we're going to have to take $1.9 million of money left over this year and put it towards next year's budget. Now, this is something that we've done year over year. In the last 12 years, that number has grown from $350,000 to nearly $2 million. Our goal is to push it back in the other direction. And so if you remember the very first version of this budget, that number was over 2 million, and we committed to reducing it. Our administrative team has worked very hard, even this morning, in finding ways to reduce the need for that number to be as high as it is. And so going forward in every budget presentation you're going to hear from now until the board adopts it is going to be us mitigating expenses to shrink that bottom line number, that 1.9. Ideally, we want to get it back to 1.7 where we are currently, with the long-term goal of trending that number back below $1 million. Because what that means is we can rely on our annual revenues to offset our annual expenses. Right now, there's a gap of about $2 million that we're using rollover funds to compensate for, okay? And again, just to clarify, part of our projected expenses are estimations and assumptions and honestly precautionary allocations, where in the event that X happens, we have money to cover it. Now, we do that for X, Y, and Z in the hopes that not all three of them happen, but if they do, we're covered. And if they don't, we have a little money left over that can be put towards the following year or into our reserve accounts.
Elliot, the reduction in state aid, is that primarily in transportation?
We did take a hit in transportation. We've updated all of our contract agreements for our 5-year contract with First Student. With the pupil transportation unit, there was an impact to our state aid for summer runs and for our home to school runs. We lost about $200,000 in aid we're looking to recoup. The governor committed in her proposed budget that we would get the hold harmless feature of state aid, meaning foundation aid would go up 2%. Foundation aid went up 2%, but our actual total aid package was negative about $40,000. And part of that is the transportation hit. So we're hopeful, again, that foundation aid is increased, which would give us another point on that. We're also hopeful that our transportation aid comes back. There's other factors. They're looking at a per pupil allocation increase for pre-K. There's other lines that we're, again, optimistic and hopeful are words I hate to use when it comes to people's money, but there's no other way to say it. We're just very hopeful that our aid offsets. We can sustain the budget as currently constructed. Is it the best plan long-term? Not necessarily. Can we survive the next few years? Yes. As the aid revenue increases, our need for fund balance appropriation year over year will decrease. If all of the assumptions and hopes that we have do come through, we should be allocating less towards next year than we did to this year. So I can't give you anything more concrete than that because there's so much uncertainty in some of these numbers. But really within the next 2 to 3 weeks, we're hoping that that tightens up.
And if we were able to work with First Student to say, I don't know, reduce one run or something to reduce the amount of money that they're charging us, we would also reduce our state aid for transportation.
Well, right, as the expense comes down, the aid would be reduced proportionally, but we've also had contraction of runs already this year. We've contracted an out-of-district run and a home-to-school run. We had a meeting this morning with our regional and local managers from First Student. We're looking at all of our options for collapsing runs internally. We're also looking at options for combining runs with neighboring districts to common locations. So one of the analyses that we've asked them to do for us is a run analysis of what the time would look like if we collapsed runs, and if we collapsed 2 runs, 6 runs, all the runs. We've also asked them to give us a report because First Student has a contract with Dover. We asked them to give us a list of common destinations for their out-of-district runs to see if there's any opportunities to reallocate resources between districts through an intermunicipal agreement, which would save both districts money in a positive direction.
Okay.
Yeah, and so just to give a little context to what he's saying, it's not that it's not possible to reduce to like a one-tier system, it's that we would have to add more buses, more drivers, the route times would change significantly. And we said, okay, but we'd really like to see what that would look like,
Right.
so we can at least make an informed decision, but you know, it's not so easy and we can't have people opt out of transportation. So even in the event that a parent may never use the transportation, we still have to provide transportation, you know, availability to every single pupil.
Well, and those can, I mean, if somebody said, no, I don't need the bus to come and get my kids. And a week later, they said, nah, you know what, I need my kids, but we have nothing
Right.
to do about it.
Right. And so we just have to be prepared
Yeah.
for that.
Okay.
You wanna go through these or?
So nothing has changed since the last time this slide has been on there. These are some of the additions that we made in the 24-25 school year that are being carried over, as well as some additional, goods and services. So we added an ENL teacher. You'll remember that from the end of August till the beginning of school, our population doubled in terms of students who were here learning English as a new language and therefore needed services to be provided to them. And so we will have to retain that staff going into the 25-26 school year. We also are adding money to the budget for the replacement of obsolete athletic equipment. When we talk about athletic equipment, we're very often talking about student safety, and that's not something that any of us are willing to compromise. So we have to be sure that we are doing that if that's so necessary. And we've also done some reallocations within the budget to make sure that some codes are easily trackable. So how much exactly is being spent on the provision of services to ENL? So we've created their own tree of codes. We've also created capital expenses, separating them out. They will eventually, if this capital project passes, they will be moved to the capital project code. However, right now, it's just a separate set of codes within our budget. And then we've increased the funding for building operations, maintenance and repairs because, as I think we've mentioned once or twice, there's pretty much like 4 hours a day that there's not somebody on campus at this point in time. And so, that obviously has escalated costs in those areas.
Well,
So,
I mean, that's, for those listening, that is one of the most important changes in the Millbrook Central School District practices is we are, for the longest time, maintenance and operations were sort of like, well, just don't, keep it working, figure out how to keep it working. We're trying our best to not just move forward with a capital project that gets everything up to where it should be, but we also have the funding, the staffing, the knowledge to keep it that way going into the future. And that is, we keep getting questions about how did it get here? What do you make, how are you sure it's not gonna end up here again? And the idea is, it's sort of on us, it's on Millbrook Central School District that it got to where it is. And now we're trying to do capital projects to get everything back up to snuff, but also the practices, preventative maintenance, all those things that come with keeping our investments well maintained. And I think, people need to understand the importance of not just the money that we're talking about, but the way we're training our people, the way we're committing to, you know, like I said, preventative maintenance schedules, not wait for break, but, you know, repair it before it breaks. Anyway, I didn't mean to throw you off.
No, that's okay, that's okay. So here's some of the, you know, unfortunate conversations that we have to have. The state aid picture is, very, very dim at this point. We are hoping that more money will come through, but at this point, it is nothing more than a hope. We've had some very strategic conversations today. As of yesterday, even, you know, we continue to contract every single place that we can. So far, we have 3 folks, well, we have a personnel assistant position that is vacant that will not be returning next year. We have 3 folks who have retired / resigned, and so those positions will not be replaced for the 25-26 school year. That will be, a contraction within the budget. We are looking at the potential, in our current state of an additional 3 full-time equivalents, which we have not publicly stated where those will be coming from, because we don't need panic, right? Or over the school district before we truly understand what money is coming in. We have cut software subscriptions wherever we could. We have cut services, as of yesterday. Elliot, Amy and I sat down and cut another $162,000 of services and whatnot. So that work is going to fall on someone within. But it's at this point in time, a necessity, right? To basically re-examine how we're doing what we're doing and in what places. So happy to share specifics of that. Some of that, again, some of that impacts people, so we are not speaking about it publicly at this time. And then just to note, if the money does not come through as we're projecting with the additional transportation aid, now that we've been, I'll say, negotiating with People Transportation Unit, feverishly and aggressively, if that money does not come through, we may be looking at additional cuts. And that's the unfortunate reality of where we are right now. And that is just to bring this budget to where it is manageable with the fund balance allocation that Elliot described. Fiscally, we were hit with, you know, $90,000 of additional expenses between BOCES and our insurance. So our insurance went up 17%. That is our insurance. And health insurance went up 6.25%. 6% flat. So when you have a quote unquote 2% tax cap to stay within and everything is growing at, you know, significant multiples of that, it's very near impossible to manage a budget with the same staffing structures that we have.
To Caroline's point, we've shaved off almost $500,000 from the first version of this budget that you saw to this one. So we keep going back and trimming to the best we can to make this a manageable and affordable year over year. So these last couple of slides are just in case the budget does not get approved by the voters, what are the district's options? So legally, the district can go directly to a contingency budget, or they can propose the same budget or an alternate version of the budget, or just choose to go direct to contingency. If we go directly to contingency, the very simple version of the story is we have to go with the last authorization the taxpayers gave us. So in very simple terms, if you authorized us to levy $27 million last year in taxes, we're gonna maintain that authorization absent of a new authorization for a higher amount. And so if that should happen, the district would lose an additional $707,900 in tax levy revenue. That is our projected levy to levy increase. So in a contingency budget, the levy to levy increase goes to 0. Additionally, there are required budget items that have to come out. And so one of the factors that drives this is the administrative component as it relates to program absent of the capital section. Just the ratio of admin to program has to be the lesser of either the proposed budget or the previous year budget. In our case, this year, it would be the previous ratio, that the proposed ratio would be just a little bit higher. And so taking all things into account, we would, first thing that comes off the top is salary increases for our non-union staff. All of our proposed equipment would come out, and that includes the safety equipment that we would be purchasing for the athletics department. So I just want to be crystal clear, that is not an option. It has to come out of the budget. We don't get to buy the safety equipment for our sports teams, or any other required maintenance equipment or anything else that would be on an equipment line. That also includes technology devices and things of that nature. So should we go to a contingency budget, the salary increases for non-union staff comes out immediately, as does all of our equipment. We have gone into the budget in each of the three categories, admin, program, and capital, and identified an additional $215,000 of things that we would hate to do without, but would have to, make tough choices about. And so we can already identify right now today, $490,000 worth of things that we would reluctantly remove from the budget, or either by choice or requirement. It would still leave us with $217,000 of expenses to remove. And again, not trying to be scary, spooky, or just trying to be crystal clear. The most expensive things we have are people. And so it'd be hard to start chipping away at that 217 without some additional tough conversations about staffing. And again, I would say staffing and student facing things. Everything that we trim in a contingency plan is to try to get things that aren't directly student facing, more operational, more back of the house type of stuff. But there comes a point where we can't do that anymore. And so the last $250,000 nearly would have to be recovered in things that affect children. I can just say it that way. And we would have to figure out what those things are. Okay. So in short, our budget at a glance, as it stands currently, our 24-25 budget at $34,575,075, our proposed budget at $35,775,020, or a budget to budget difference of 1.1, almost $1.2 million, or 3.46%, just under 3.5% budget to budget increase, and the levy to levy increase 2.61. This is a very important slide, even though it's just a few numbers, just to show you that our expenses are outpacing our ability to generate revenue. The tax levy is capped, and staying within that cap is a 2.61%. The inflation factor alone for this year is identified at 2.98%, just under 3%. So if nothing else, the cost of doing business is a half a point higher than what we can raise in taxes. And our state aid number is coming in lower than it was last year. So it's not a very exciting budget, but we're doing the best we can to keep our operations running next year. Any questions?
Questions? Okay, all right, thank you, Elliot.
Thank you. That's me?
Yeah.
Okay. Give me 1 second to share again. So this is just a couple of slides to show updated figures. When the board gave us the authorization to bring forward the capital project in May, we proposed it in 2 propositions. So as a reminder, we're going to keep sharing this messaging just to eliminate any possibility for confusion. Proposition 1 on the May ballot is going to be the general fund budget we just spoke about. So that's always Prop 1, it never changes. And so our 2 capital propositions are going to be listed as Proposition 2 and Proposition 3. And I'm sure all of this will be covered when Carolyn does her video about what the ballot's going to look like, specifically to address those questions and concerns. So Proposition 2 is going to be all of the repairs and proposed work for Millbrook Middle School and adding on some efficiency upgrades to Millbrook High School. Okay, the major items are going to include roof and windows, full HVAC system replacement, energy performance contract work that's cost neutral to taxpayers, but we do get an extra 10% from the state if we put it on the ballot, and some ADA improvements here at the middle school. The high school scope of work is simply going to be HVAC system repairs and efficiency upgrades. Again, for those listening at home, why the high school? It's brand new. The high school's 19 years old, And HVAC systems in general are rated to last 15 to 18 years. So as Mr. Hartswick said before, we get a lot of questions about how did this happen? Well, we're putting the high school upfront on Proposition 2 to show that we're trying to be very intentional with our planning so that nothing falls into a 50-year state of disrepair. The HVAC system at the high school is very important because that building is designed to respirate mechanically. Whereas the older buildings in our district can open windows and have free-flowing air. The high school was designed to have air pulled and pushed through it through mechanical systems, and so we need to keep that system operational to the best we can. So a minor tweak to the numbers, Proposition 2's impact to taxpayers is going to be 38 cents per $1,000 of full assessed value. That is the assessed value on your tax bill, and it applies to your school taxes. It is not what Zillow or Realtor or any of these websites estimate your value to be. It's not what your neighbor's house sold for. It's not what the house down the block that looks just like mine sold for. It is what's on your tax bill. Okay, so 38 cents on the $1,000 full value for your tax bill for Proposition 2 to repair the middle school and high school. Now, I'll show you what that means based on tax values in just a couple minutes. So I want to jump real quick to Proposition 3. Proposition 3 will be for Elm Drive and Alden repairs. That is full HVAC replacements at both Elm and Alden. It's also going to include window replacements at Elm specifically and a boiler replacement at Alden. So there's just a little nuance to that difference in work. But both scopes of work are relatively consistent with each other. And so the tax impact is going to be 64 cents on the $1,000. Now, if you look at this chart, I'm going to jump back 1 second. You'll see that these second and third lines are blank. And the reason for that is because we are intentionally front loading our cash on hand and capital reserves to the tune of $12 million. And we're also allocating the retiring debt service of just about 11.3 million. And what that means is we've got old debt on the books. It's going to roll off in the 27-28 year. And we'd like to replace that debt so that there's no fluctuation or artificial fluctuation, what we would say, to our residents' tax bills. So that they're already paying for that 11.3. We're going to let them keep paying for that. And we're only going to ask them to support an additional tax levy for that 10.4 out of 42 million. Because we don't have those lines for Prop 3, the impact to the taxpayers is basically the difference of the total scope of work minus the EPC and our projected state aid. So that's why that number is 18.3 million or 64 cents per $1,000. So for Propositions 2 and 3 put together, as much as I love round numbers and these 2 cents are driving me crazy, we're looking at $1.02 per $1,000 of full assessed value for our taxpayers. We often get people ripping out their phones, trying to calculate real quick. And again, these estimates are irrespective of star discounts. So if you have a star exemption, if you have basic star or enhanced star, your numbers might be a little bit different. So what I'm going to do next is I'm just going to take 1 second to not share this screen anymore. And I want to show you what the tiered effects to homeowners would be as illustrated in our financial advisors report. So this is for Proposition 2. You'll see on the left-hand side, your full assessed value banded in $100,000 increments. And then we have 3 columns coming from left to right: enhanced star, basic star, no star. So if you're a retiree living in the house you've lived in for 50 years here in Millbrook, we love it that you've been here so long, and you're probably in that left column. Most of our working families that live and work from the same house, they're in the middle basic star section. And if this is your second or third home, you might be in that right-hand side for no star. So we kind of want to shoot for the middle just to be illustrative. The average taxed parcel in our district catchment area is about 541,000. Residential values hover about the 350 mark. So we tend to focus on the 300 to 600 band, as kind of captures the vast majority of our homeowners. So for a $400,000 assessed value home, to support Proposition 2 for the middle school and high school repairs, it would cost you $141 estimated per year, or $11.75 per month. Okay, if you'll let me jump ahead, I can show you what the Proposition 3, this is a lot of financial data I can go back to if you'd like to hear about it. but Proposition 2 and 3, so if we choose to vote yes on Prop 2 and 3, having done work at all 4 buildings, that work can be supported on a $400,000 home for just $377 per year, or $31.42 a month for a home with basic star exemption.
Right, and so to be clear, it is not 141 plus 377. That is the total of props 2 and 3 for a $400,000, so 377 total.
And I just do wanna say, it's funny that you mentioned, there is a house in my neighborhood that is for sale. And on Zillow or whatever it is this dollar amount. We just got our tax bill. They are 2 completely different numbers,
Huge,
so I'm. Huge. Yeah, a huge difference.
I'm sure you're
Huge
grateful that the tax bill
difference.
number is a lot lower than.
Yes,
the-
yes, so I wanna emphasize that because you've said it before many times. And it literally just happened that we saw our tax bill and I saw what the house is selling for, and it is it's not 50%, but it is very close.
Yeah.
The
Wow.
amount higher that it is, so I would just encourage people to really look at what your tax bill is.
Yeah, thanks for that, Jen. Any other questions or? Anything that's not clear?
And we're still, yeah, if you vote yes for 2, then you can vote yes for 3, but you can't just pick or choose 2 or 3.
Yeah, I think, I have to double check with the wording on the ballot to make sure that is included. I know there was some ambiguity to that was confusing for folks.
Okay.
So we wanted to just show them stacked for full
Okay.
clarity. But I'll double check that for you. I'm just not
All right.
100%.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Irene.
You're welcome.
All right. Let's see what's up next. Questions, comments?
None.
None. Anybody online? All right, next is, enrollment reports there for your entertainment, I guess. So, there we go. Any questions on the, enrollment? All right, incidents? Any questions on that
I have one.
that we can do in?
Yeah,
public?
info, yeah. I know this is just tracking suspensions. Do we track things that are meaningful, but that don't result in suspensions in some way that we're going back to look at that, like an anomaly, something that happens, it's significant, but maybe somebody's never caught.
I don't know what you're asking.
Well, something, a behavior, an inappropriate incident that results, that's significant and meaningful for us, the board to know about, or, this district to know about. But it doesn't result in a suspension. Like if something occurs and is in the perpetrator's never caught. Somebody's not suspended, but it still happened. And how do we keep that in the forefront of our minds?
So I think there's multiple different avenues.
Mhm.
It depends on what type of scenario you're speaking about. We track lots of different places. Some is safety team data at the building level, which is not for public consumption.
Right.
Some of it is tracked in risk assessment, threat assessment, suicide assessment data that we keep. Some of it is tracked as student interactions within the student information system. Some of it is counseling data. Like there's lots of different things. And just because we can't pinpoint an individual person doesn't mean that we can at times identify a group of people, and there might be, not everything is remedied by suspension either. So there may still be intervention that happens. even if we can't pinpoint one person that's done something, so. Lots of that stuff does happen and is tracked, and is discussed and reviewed at different committee type meetings,
Okay.
but I would
just-
need a more specific
No,
question.
just,
to
no,
get a
no,
more
no,
specific
I think,
answer.
no, that answered it. Yep. Thank you.
Other questions? Future agenda. Next is, to go to executive session, just for those that might be listening. Just because we go to executive session, which basically means, we're kind of cut off from the outside world. But, that does not mean the meeting itself is over. If we have anything that we need to take action on, we have to do that in public, and we'll do that on our return. Do I have a motion to go to executive session?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Fine.
Any against? All right.